Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take the frustration out of information overload and give you the essential tactical knowledge you need to succeed.
And today, we are tackling something that is a huge yet really subtle barrier to fluency in English.
What's that?
It's the anxiety that comes from constantly having to ask the person you're talking to repeat themselves.
That's so true. Our mission today is to move you, the listener, past that really frustrating cycle of repetition fatigue. I mean, think about it.
Yeah,
You hit a block, you didn't catch a word, maybe a whole sentence just flew by. Your default, almost reflexive response is what?
it's always, can you repeat that? Or maybe just a flat, I don't understand.
Exactly. And those phrases, I mean, they're technically correct, but they just kill the conversation.
They absolutely do. They're like forcing the speaker to just stop, rewind the whole conversation, and hit a reset button. And linguistic experts we've looked at confirm this.
What, that students overuse them?
They default to them so often that they become, well, acutely embarrassed. They start to see themselves as high maintenance or maybe just slow listeners.
And here's the really dangerous part. That feeling of embarrassment, the repetition anxiety, it leads to students just giving up.
Completely.
They stop trying to clarify. They just nod, they smile, pretend they understand, and then walk away having learned absolutely nothing.
Precisely. And that decision to stop asking for help, it completely halts your listening development. So this deep dive is about giving you more than just a list of polite phrases.
It's about the tools.
It's about providing specific, nuanced tools that are tailored to the exact reason you didn't hear something. Was the person too quiet? Did they speak too quickly? Or did you just not recognize one little piece of vocabulary?
Okay, so we've got a comprehensive playbook for you today. We're going to explore some quick, native-sounding alternatives.
We'll also analyze how subtle things, like a simple change in your tone of voice, can turn an apology into a question.
And I think this is the most important part. We are going to expose some of the hidden features of spoken English. Things like connected speech that trip up even really advanced learners.
Okay, let's unpack this core psychological block first. Because the problem with over-repetition is, it's absolutely real.
Oh, yeah.
You're in a great conversation, you're enjoying the flow, and then, bam, you have to stop everything and say the same 5 or 6 words again.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Please, can you repeat that? It just gets old fast.
It creates a negative feedback loop. The more you interrupt with that exact same phrase, the more self-conscious you become.
And like we said, that leads to what we're calling the catastrophic shutdown.
Right, and when you stop asking, you lose the opportunity to train your ear to the actual rhythm, the speed, the subtleties of natural English. You effectively stop challenging yourself.
So your learning just plateaus.
Significantly, which is a tragedy, really. The whole point of language immersion is learning to manage those gaps and understanding gracefully. So before we get to the phrases for in-the-moment use, we have to look at the foundational recommendation in the research. It's a method for deep listening improvement.
A method that actually reduces the need to ask for repetition in the first place.
And what is that method?
It's a very specialized technique.
Mm-hmm.
Reading a book in English while at the same time listening to its professionally recorded audiobook version.
A dual modality approach.
Exactly. And its effectiveness is rooted very deeply in a unique structural oddity of the English language.
Okay, we need to spend some time here because this detail is critical. Why do we need this dual approach? Why isn't just reading or, just listening enough on its own?
Well, it comes down to the inconvenient truth that English is not a strictly phonetic language.
Not at all.
Unlike, say, Spanish or Italian, where the written word almost always maps directly and consistently to the spoken sound. In English, the two are often, they're almost separate things.
It's actually astonishing when you stop and think about it. The spelling of a word can give you absolutely no clue how it's pronounced.
And vice versa.
Right. Just think of something simple, like the letters O-U-G-H.
Oh, that's the classic example. You have, though, through, thought, and trough.
All spelled almost identically, all sound completely different. And that kind of thing frustrates even intermediate learners.
Exactly. So if you only read, you're going to be tripped up constantly by silent letters, irregular vowels, shifts and stress. You might learn to spell schedule, for example.
But you might be pronouncing it wrong for years.
For years. And conversely, if you only listen, you might develop a good ear, but you won't solidify that visual memory.
Your spelling connect.
Which is vital for writing and for, active, confident verbal retrieval.
So if you're learning them separately, the brain has two different files, basically. There's the visual file for spelling and the audio file for sound.
And a fast-paced conversation requires you to link those two files instantly.
Ah, and this is where the synchronized method comes in.
This is where it becomes so powerful. When your brain listens to a word, let's take a tricky one, like aisle, while at the same time seeing the letters AISLE on the page, those neurological files are forced to merge.
The brain has to build a bridge.
It has to. A bridge between the written form and the spoken form that the language itself doesn't provide naturally.
It's like building a cross-reference index in your own brain.
That's a perfect analogy. The next time you see aisle written down, your brain instantly supplies the correct pronunciation. The next time you hear aisle, you know exactly how it's spelled.
So it's accelerating retention.
And comprehension, far faster than studying those things in isolation. It's an active process of training your brain to recognize and use the phonetic weirdness of English.
Which, in the long run, reduces how often you'll have to stop a conversation and ask, what was that word?
It's your long-term fluency insurance policy.
That makes perfect sense. It addresses the root cause, that
Yeah.
gap between the visual and the auditory. But, okay, let's rewind to the moment of panic. We're mid-conversation, we've missed something, and we need a quick fix. We need the tools that cause the least interruption.
Which brings us to part 2.
Okay, so we're looking for the quickest, the smoothest, the most native way to get a replo without sounding like a broken record.
And our absolute frontrunner, what we're calling the one-word savior, is the word sorry.
Just sorry.
Simple, short, incredibly versatile. Linguistic observations confirm this is overwhelmingly what native speakers default to when they genuinely haven't heard or understood something. It's just efficient.
But hang on, if sorry is so easy, why is the default for learners still that big clunky phrase, can you repeat?
That's a critical question.
Is it just the intonation? What's the biggest mistake learners make when they try to use it?
The mistake is treating it as an apology first and a question second. If you say sorry with a flat or slightly falling tone, it just sounds like a generic apology.
Like when you bumped into someone.
Exactly. Or walk past them. The speaker will probably just ignore it or say, that's okay, and keep talking.
So the big aha moment here is the intonation. How do we make sure that one simple word signals a demand for repetition?
You have to impose a distinct question mark onto the sound itself. Experts describe it as a specific, almost sing-song, down-up pattern.
So it's like, sorry.
Exactly like that.
Mhm.
The voice has to start medium, dip a little, and then rise sharply at the end. That upward lift is what signals doubt, confusion, and the clear request for the speaker to repeat what they just said.
It's the difference between saying, my mistake, I apologize, and saying, wait, what did you just say?
Yeah.
All in one word.
Right. And because it's so short, you could use it 3, 4, 5 times in a row in a really difficult conversation, and it still feels less burdensome than repeating a whole formal sentence.
It minimizes the friction.
It does. Now let's navigate the more perilous waters of formal language, where your tone and the context become everything.
Okay, first up, the slightly more formal option. Excuse me.
And this one requires immediate caution. It is a bit more formal than sorry.
Yeah. Oh.
Sure, it's
Yeah.
appropriate for service settings, initial encounters. But if you say it with the wrong tone, it instantly shifts from a request for clarity to an expression of offense.
Oh, absolutely. I can just picture it. If your coworker accuses you of something unfair, you might lean forward and say, excuse me, with that sharp, downward, almost aggressive tone.
Yes, that signals indignation. You're challenging them. To use it for repetition, you absolutely must hold on to that light, upward, querying lilt.
It has to sound tentative, not challenging.
And the body language is crucial too. Leaning in slightly suggests you couldn't hear. Pushing your body back suggests you were offended by what you heard.
Okay, let's move even higher up the formality scale. We're now encountering pardon.
This is definitely what you'd call a posh word. It's very formal, maybe a little old-fashioned or regional, but it's perfectly appropriate in highly formal environments.
Or when speaking to someone significantly older.
Right. I love the anecdote about people being taught this by their grandmothers as a direct substitute for the informal and sometimes rude what?
It signals a very high degree of politeness. But then we reach the linguistic Mount Everest, the poshest and riskiest of them all.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Extreme caution is the key phrase here. While it can be used to genuinely request repetition,
But who actually does that?
well, in very formal, maybe period drama settings, but in modern conversation, it is far more frequently used to signal outrage, offense, or just heavy sarcasm.
It just sounds ridiculous if you try to use it genuinely, doesn't it? It feels like you're setting yourself up for a misunderstanding.
It really does. It requires a perfect delivery. If your boss accidentally says something with a double meaning, you might hear colleagues say in a joking, raised voice, "I beg your pardon," and then everyone laughs.
Or if someone truly insults you, it's the perfect phrase for shocked offense.
Right. The moment you use a hard downward tone or you recoil physically, you've signaled a confrontation, not confusion.
So the takeaway is, unless you're aiming for extreme formality or a specific joke, just stick to sorry and maybe a carefully intoned, "excuse me."
Let's move back to the middle ground. The normal, clear phrases that are much less risky.
The workhorses.
The workhorse phrases. We recommend "what was that?" and "what did you say?"
Which are already so much better than just blurting out, "What?" That can sound incredibly abrupt or even hostile, depending on your tone.
And here is the simple, beautiful refinement, the polite enhancement.
What's that?
Just take those phrases and tack on "sorry" at the end. You get, "What was that? Sorry." Or "What did you say? Sorry."
That little addition acts as a social lubricant. It just smooths the directness of the question.
Precisely. The "sorry" acts as a tiny preemptive apology for the interruption itself.
It signals, "I need you to repeat, but I do apologize for breaking your flow."
Exactly. It keeps the whole conversation positive, even when you're using a longer phrase.
Okay, we've established the quick fixes. Now let's get specific. We need phrases that tell the speaker exactly what level of confusion we're experiencing.
Let's start with the most comprehensive option direct, overt clarity.
The full stop.
The full stop. If you need to stop the conversation completely and ensure the speaker gives you a full replay, the sentence structure is key. "I don't understand. Could you say that again, please?"
Or you could slightly adjust the emphasis. "Please, could you say that again? I don't understand." The crucial word here, no matter where you put it, is please.
Absolutely paramount. We know that placing it at the beginning or the end doesn't change the functional meaning, but psychologically.
What's the difference?
Placing "please" right at the start ensures the speaker understands instantly that this is a respectful, considered request, not some panicked demand. It respects their time and effort to repeat themselves.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's move to a more advanced, more nuanced scenario, signifying partial understanding.
Right. You didn't miss everything. You just missed the crucial pivot point of the message.
So for this, we introduce the subtle power of a single word.
The word "quite." The phrases are, "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that," or "Sorry, I didn't quite get that."
The word "quite" is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It really is. It implies that you, the listener, grasped the context, maybe the first half of the sentence or the general topic. But you missed the complete message or the critical details.
So it's an acknowledgement that you were paying attention.
Yes, it signals that the information density or the speed was just a little too high. It's a much less demanding request than asking for a complete redo of the last 30 seconds.
And since we're using the word catch here, let's just confirm the definition for everyone listening.
Good point. To catch something in this context is purely conversational slang. It means to hear and understand.
You're not talking about physically catching a ball.
No. Saying "I didn't catch that" is a perfectly natural and widely accepted way to say "I didn't understand that particular bit."
And get works the same way.
Exactly the same. "I didn't quite get that." It uses "get" to mean mentally processing or absorbing the information.
Okay, next, let's narrow the focus even more. We're targeting extremely recent speech. This is for when the speaker is just barreling forward and you know you need that last sentence repeated right now before they move on.
For this, we use the time marker "just" to pinpoint the information we missed.
So the phrases are,
Sorry, what did you just say? Or what did you say just then? Using "just" or "just then" signals to the speaker that they only need to replay the content from the immediate past.
it saves time. They don't have to repeat the whole paragraph.
Right. And this focus on the word just brings us directly to one of the most important technical segments for listening comprehension:
Connected speech.
connected speech. This is where most intermediate learners get completely lost because what they're hearing is different from what they see in a textbook.
It's a massive fluency hurdle.
It is, because it involves a linguistic phenomenon called elision, where sounds get dropped, or assimilation, where sounds merge together. If you're listening for individual, distinct words, you're going to get lost every single time.
So let's focus on the examples we just used with just. What exactly happens when a native speaker says, "What did you just say?" really quickly?
Well, the source material highlights that the "and" sound at the end of "just" often drops out when it's followed by a word starting with a consonant.
Like in just say or just then.
Exactly. So instead of hearing the distinct hard T in just, you hear the words merge into one sound. Just say, or just then. The acoustic signal for the T just vanishes.
So if I'm listening and I know the written phrase is what did you just say, but I actually hear just say, my brain might not even realize I've heard the word just at all.
Precisely. And this pattern is everywhere in English. Think of the common contraction wanna. That's not a real word, it's want to.
Or gonna for going to.
Right. Learners often think these are separate vocabulary words they need to learn when they are simply examples of very common sound mergers.
Are there other technical examples of connected speech we should be training our ears for?
A very common one is the blending of a final consonant with the word you. For example, did you almost always becomes did you.
And would you becomes would you.
Yes, that don't sound merges with the Y sound to create a Joe's sound. So if a speaker asks quickly, did you understand that point? And you are listening for the distinct separation of dead and you, your brain gets momentarily confused.
It's like a tiny processing delay.
It is. And by training your ear to recognize these high-frequency merges, like just say wanna and did you reduce that cognitive load. And you reduce the need to ask for repetition because the sounds you hear finally match your mental expectations.
Which brings us right back to that reading while listening method.
That's why it's so helpful. It maps these spoken shortcuts directly onto the visual structure of the words.
So far, we've assumed the problem is us, our comprehension, or that we missed one word. But, sometimes the problem is entirely the speaker's delivery.
Absolutely.
We need polite, direct tools for dealing with someone who's too quiet or talking way too fast. Let's start with volume.
If the speaker is simply too quiet, the phrase you need is, would you mind speaking up a bit?
Okay, let's focus on that phrasal verb, speaking up. Why is that so much better than the other options?
Because it's the most polite and natural way to ask someone to increase their volume. If you were to say, please speak more loudly, it can sound very demanding, almost like a command.
And saying, please speak less quietly is just weird.
It's linguistically awkward and sounds a bit passive-aggressive. Speaking up is direct, it's universally understood, and most importantly, it frames the issue as a simple physical adjustment.
Right. You're not criticizing their voice, you're just requesting a technical fix so the conversation can continue.
It's a quick fix request. Now let's tackle the other great frustration pace. The speaker's clear, they're loud, they're articulate, but they are just delivering information faster than you can process it.
And the primary strategy here is implication. You want to signal the issue without explicitly demanding they slow down.
Right. Because a direct command like slow down can feel a bit accusatory. You're basically telling them they're talking too fast, which can make them self-conscious.
So instead, we use phrases that focus the problem back on our state of comprehension.
Yes. The two key phrases we analyzed are, sorry, I'm not following what you're saying, or wait a second, I'm a bit lost.
I really appreciate the nuance there. By saying, I'm not following or I'm lost, you are politely explaining that you, the listener, are struggling to keep up with the pace of the information.
It shifts the focus. When a speaker hears that their listener is getting lost, their natural empathetic response is almost always to subconsciously lower their speed.
And maybe simplify their sentences a bit.
Exactly. It's a social way of managing pace without a direct confrontation. It usually works implicitly.
But what if it doesn't? What if the implication fails and they're still racing through their point?
In that case, you need the clear and polite direct route. You combine the polite phrasing with the explanation of the issue.
Which would sound like,
Would you mind slowing down a bit? I'm struggling to follow. It's a comprehensive statement. It provides the solution, slowing down, and the reason I'm struggling. All wrapped in that very polite frame of, would you mind?
okay, finally, let's talk about surgical clarification. The overall sentence is fine, the pace is good, but one technical word or one phrase, an idiom maybe, is the specific barrier.
This requires pinpoint accuracy. You want to interrupt the flow only long enough to clarify that single element. The phrase is, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by word or phrase.
So, for example, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by synergy in that context.
Exactly. And the critical, often missed linguistic detail here is the preposition.
What do you mean?
You don't mean about a word or mean with a word. You always mean by a word or a phrase. Mastering that little prepositional structure is key.
What do you mean by this concept?
Yes. It signals instantly that you're just asking for the definition of that one specific element, allowing the speaker to define it quickly without having to repeat their entire idea.
We've now armed the listener with a whole set of technical, specific phrases for every scenario, but conversation is also a social
A
performance.
huge part of it.
And we have to address the anxiety around interrupting people over and over again. That feeling of constantly breaking the flow can be almost as paralyzing as not understanding in the first place.
It is a significant hurdle.
Oh,
You feel rude, especially in a formal or maybe a high-energy conversation. But the expert consensus is clear. It is perfectly acceptable to interrupt,
provided.
provided you preface your interruption with an apology.
So the apology acts as a kind of social shield.
Okay.
It preemptively mitigates the rudeness of cutting someone off.
Right. And you can use a straightforward, formal apology like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you mind repeating what you just said? That I'm sorry to interrupt sets the social boundary correctly.
And what if you're with friends or you find yourself having to stop the speaker continuously, like every 30 seconds?
That's where the slang phrasal verb to butt in comes into play.
Yeah.
To butt in means specifically to interrupt a conversation.
Which is very useful slang, but it's definitely casual.
Oh, absolutely. Friends only. You might say something like, I'm sorry to butt in again, but I missed that last detail.
Or just the short, sorry to interrupt again.
Yes, using again is key there because it acknowledges your awareness of the frequent stops and it helps maintain that friendly, casual dynamic.
Okay, now let's look at what might be the ultimate social master strategy, the flattery technique.
Ah, yes. The source material suggests this is the most powerful social lubricant for continuous learning. It makes repetition comfortable for both the learner and the speaker.
And it's a proactive strategy, right? You don't wait until the interruptions start to feel awkward.
No, you set the social contract at the very beginning of the interaction.
Okay, so let's role play this. I'm approaching a new native-speaking colleague, and I know I'm probably going to need clarification regularly. How do I start the flattery technique gracefully?
Okay, the script involves 3 distinct parts. Part 1. Start by giving a genuine compliment about their skill. You could say, look, I really like the way you articulate your thoughts. Your English is so fluid.
Part 2 is explaining my motivation and my challenge.
Correct. Something like, I'm in a critical phase of my development. I'm specifically trying to improve my listening comprehension with rapid speech.
So you're framing your future interruptions as part of your active learning process.
And not as a reflection of their poor clarity. Then comes part 3. Ask for explicit permission to use them as a learning resource.
Which would be?
Would you mind if I occasionally ask you to repeat some things or ask a couple of quick questions just so I can catch all the nuances?
That is incredibly smart. By using this strategy, you have preemptively removed the social burden. You've turned an interruption into a collaboration.
Exactly. You've managed their expectations up front. They're no longer dealing with a constant, awkward surprise every time you have to ask, sorry.
And once they've agreed, and I imagine most native speakers would be happy to help someone who's actively learning.
They usually are. Once they've agreed, you have permission to go back to those quick single-word questions like, sorry, or even just use simple gestures. It becomes far less embarrassing for you and way less disruptive for them.
It transforms the entire interaction. It's no longer a frustrating impediment. It's a positive, collaborative learning environment.
And that is a huge psychological shift.
We've saved the most fun, but also the most high-risk phrases for last.
Absolutely.
We're moving from the polite, functional toolbox to the expressive, conversational way of signaling you are utterly confused.
And we have to issue a very strong warning before we dive in here. These idioms and slang phrases are social commentary. They should only be used with close friends or peers with whom you share mutual trust and a real sense of humor.
Right. Do not use these with your teacher. Do not use them with a potential employer or your boss.
Absolutely not. Many of these phrases contain a subtle undercurrent of criticism or sarcasm, either directed at the speaker or the complexity of the topic. Using them in a formal setting could be seen as highly rude or unprofessional.
Noted. Diplomacy is out. Shared humor is in. Let's start with idiom number 1, a total classic. This is all Greek to me.
The meaning is pretty straightforward. I cannot understand this at all. It is so foreign or complicated, it might as well be an entirely different language. It's a very established idiom used in both American and British English.
I love the observation that if the person who's speaking happens to actually be Greek, it just adds this instant layer of self-deprecating humor.
It does. It highlights the universality of it. It's not meant as an insult to the Greek language, but just as a shorthand for total incomprehension.
So if a mechanic is explaining a complicated engine diagram, you might laugh and say,
You could say, wow, that diagram is all Greek to me. Can you simplify it a bit?
okay, idiom number 2 brings the sarcasm. That was as clear as mud.
This one is highly expressive and, yes, highly critical. Mud, of course, is opaque. It's not clear. If you say something is as clear as mud, you are explicitly stating that the explanation was terrible.
It was very unclear, poor, or just confusing.
Right. So unlike this is all Greek to me, which focuses on my lack of understanding, clear as mud focuses on the speaker's bad job of explaining it.
So you're criticizing their communication.
You are. Therefore, reserve this for people you have deep trust with. If a friend sends you a ridiculously complicated set of directions to their new apartment, you might text back, seriously, those directions were as clear as mud. Just send me the pin.
Okay, moving to idiom number 3. This one signals that the content was just too advanced. That went right over my head.
The physical analogy is what makes this one so memorable. The information didn't go into your head, it just flew right over it.
Meaning it was far too complex or abstract for you to grasp.
Exactly. It's an admission of complexity. It signals that you need a simpler, lower-level explanation of the same concept.
And this phrase is generally seen as less accusatory than clear as mud, right? It implies the content was difficult, not necessarily that the explanation was bad.
That's the key distinction. If a friend starts talking about quantum physics and you are not a physicist, you can use this phrase safely with a laugh.
Something like, okay, hold on, that last bit went right over my head. Bring it back down to earth for me.
Perfect. And finally, a very popular piece of particularly British slang. What are you on about?
What does that mean exactly?
Fundamentally, it means, what are you talking about? Or what is your point? But the subtext is absolutely critical.
And what's the linguistic root of that subtext?
It's tied to the phrasal verb to go on about something. And to go on about something means to talk excessively or for an irritatingly long time about a specific topic.
Ah, so when you ask, what are you on about? You're subtly implying that the speaker has been rambling or talking too much or focusing on something irrelevant.
Precisely. It's not just a request for clarity, it's a request to get to the point.
And because of that implied criticism of their, excessive speech, it must be reserved for very casual settings.
Very casual. If your roommate spends 5 minutes complaining about a minor issue, you might say, seriously, mate, what are you on about? Just get some sleep. And be aware, while this is ubiquitous in British English, its frequency and perceived aggression can vary in North America, so you have to gauge your audience carefully.
So we have completed a pretty comprehensive survey of repetition strategies.
I think so. To consolidate the most valuable takeaways. First, master that one-word wonder. Sorry. And its essential upward questioning intonation.
Second, understand the difference between catching something, which is hearing one piece of information, and following something, which is keeping pace with the whole argument.
And third, please utilize the strategic and social power of the word please and that proactive flattery technique to make sure your learning is continuous and positive.
And tying it all back to long-term fluency, remember the foundational importance of that reading and listening synchronization method.
Right.
That practice, actively reading the text while listening to the audiobook, is the best, most direct way to eliminate the gap between written and spoken English.
So you have to use these interruption phrases less and less frequently over time.
The true takeaway for you, the listener, is confidence and control. You now have a precision toolkit of specific phrases tailored to the exact type of clarification you need.
Whether it's volume, pace, partial confusion, or just total incomprehension, this level of specificity removes the embarrassment, allows you to maximize your listening practice, and it keeps the conversation flowing.
Which means you can keep learning, keep engaging, and keep moving toward that elusive goal of effortless fluency.
And building on that idea of the positive social strategy we discussed, the technique of asking permission to interrupt, here's a final thought. Now that you have these polite and specific tools, consider which situations demand the least amount of interruption.
Okay.
In a high-stakes, formal business meeting, where every second counts and the flow is paramount, which single, quick, polite phrase is the most efficient and least disruptive way to signal confusion? And why does that efficiency matter so much in that high-stakes environment? Think about the economic cost of interrupting 5 busy people with a long sentence versus just one well-placed word.
Food for thought. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into mastering clarity. We'll be back soon with more essential knowledge.